We have this profound, almost arrogant assumption that the systems organizing our lives are just entirely permanent.
Oh, absolutely. We always do.
Right. Like if you are a Roman senator in, say, 400 AD, walking through the Forum, or, a Soviet citizen in 1989 wrapping yourself in a heavy coat against the Moscow cold, you look around and you believe the hierarchy you serve is this eternal law of physics.
Right. You mistake the structures humans build for, like the bedrock of reality itself.
Exactly. Or even picture a lone figure staring at a newly toppled moai on Easter Island. The premise is always the same. Hierarchies feel eternal until the very day they aren't.
Yeah, it's really the ultimate illusion of human civilization. I mean, we look at a monumental system, whether it's a globe-spanning empire or, I don't know, a massive corporate monopoly, and we think it could only ever be destroyed by a sudden cataclysm.
Like an asteroid strike or something.
Right. A massive invading army breaching the gates, some giant explosion.
But the truth revealed in the sources today is, well, it's far more unsettling. Empires don't die from sudden cinematic explosions. Long before the physical walls fall, the belief in those walls just evaporates.
It really does.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are unpacking the fascinating mechanics of when hierarchies collapse, using this incredible research dossier on the human architecture of power.
It's a fantastic dossier. Yeah.
It really is. We're going to be pulling from historical case studies, diving into the psychological analyses of systemic collapse, and exploring how these real-world truths map onto the fictional universe of the book San Vitae, The Awakening.
Which is such a brilliant parallel to draw.
Right, and what I love about this is that while we often think of societal collapse as this sudden chaotic explosion, the sources reveal it's actually this slow, invisible, and fascinatingly predictable psychological process.
It is entirely a drawn-out decay of belief. If we look at the historical evidence from the dossier, Rome is, well, it's the ultimate blueprint.
The classic example.
Exactly. Rome didn't just wake up one morning and get conquered out of nowhere. It became, structurally speaking, too heavy to hold itself.
So let's get into the mechanics of why it became too heavy.
Yeah.
Because the dossier makes a point to say it wasn't just geographical size, it was administrative bloat and this severe economic stratification.
Right.
But what did that actually look like for a regular person living inside the empire at the time?
Well, it looked like a system demanding more resources than it could generate. Right. While simultaneously funneling whatever was left to the very top. To maintain this massive, overextended military and a sprawling bureaucracy, the state had to relentlessly increase taxes. But the ultra-wealthy elites, they found ways to insulate themselves.
Of course they did.
Yeah, they retreated into absolute luxury on these massive country estates, essentially exempting themselves from the burden of the state. So the crushing weight of funding the empire fell entirely on the average citizen.
Middle class just gets wiped out.
Completely. You had hyperinflation, where the currency was continually debased just to pay soldiers, which made local trade nearly impossible. You had corrupt tax farming. Basically, the hierarchy could no longer justify its own existence to the people crushed underneath it.
It makes me think of a game of Jenga.
Oh, a game of Jenga. How so?
Yeah, like instead of an external force that comes along and just knocks the tower over, it's actually the elites at the very top who keep pulling out the foundational blocks.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. They're pulling out things like civic identity and trust, just stacking them on top to elevate themselves. And eventually, the structure simply can't support its own weight. It collapses from within.
That analogy captures the causality perfectly. The structural integrity is compromised from the inside. And we see this exact same pattern of internal cannibalization in, well, entirely different geographic and cultural contexts.
Right, like the Easter Island example from the dossier.
Exactly. The Rapa Nui society. It's a completely isolated civilization, but the exact same mechanism of collapse.
They had those famous stone heads, the moai.
Yeah, and on Easter Island, resources essentially became this religion of status. You had a society organized into strict clan-based hierarchies, and the way a clan demonstrated its power and its legitimacy was by carving and transporting bigger and bigger moai statues.
Right, it was all about flexing on the other clans.
Totally. But here is the fatal mechanical flaw in that system. To move a multi-ton stone statue across an island, you need wooden rollers. You need massive amounts of palm tree trunks.
Oh, wow. So they are literally cutting down their own survival infrastructure to build monuments to their own egos.
Yes, and the deforestation wasn't just, a loss of scenery. Without large trees, the Rapa Nui could no longer build the sturdy deep-sea canoes they relied on.
And they needed those canoes for food.
Exactly, to hunt porpoises, which was their primary source of protein. So resource depletion inevitably triggers violent conflict. The hierarchy built the statues to project power, but the statues ultimately became symbols of a system that just consumed itself.
They became tombstones.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So jumping forward to the 20th century, the sources contrast this with the Soviet Union, which is such a brilliant pivot.
It really is.
Because the Soviet fall wasn't due to a lack of palm trees, obviously, and it wasn't a military invasion. It was what the text phrases as ideology exhausted.
Right. The Soviet collapse is perhaps the purest modern masterclass in psychological decay. I mean, you certainly had economic stagnation and complete bureaucratic paralysis, but
Because the planned economy just couldn't keep up.
exactly. It simply couldn't compute the variables required to feed and clothe hundreds of millions of people efficiently. But the fatal blow was the absolute evaporation of ideological faith. The system functionally required people to believe in the inevitable triumph of the socialist utopia.
But nobody actually believed it anymore.
Not even the architects of the system.
Yeah.
When the citizens, the military, and crucially the highest-ranking bureaucrats themselves stop believing the narrative, the entire hierarchy dissolves.
It just fractured from mass disillusionment.
Yeah, they simply stop pretending the Jenga tower was stable.
Which is fascinating. And this psychological blueprint of ideological exhaustion, it isn't just a quirk of history. It's so fundamentally human that it serves as the ultimate template for world building in fiction.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if we look at the universe of San Vitae, The Awakening, the author takes this exact sociological decay and applies it to the ruling Santori elite.
The parallels there are incredibly deliberate. In the novel, the Santori hierarchy is standing on the absolute brink of collapse for the exact same reasons we just outlined.
Resource strain, ideological decay, all of it.
Right. They are hoarding resources to an extreme degree. Their ideology has decayed into this cruel, detached decadence. And the science fiction element here, their immortality, serves as an amplifier for, say, the Roman elite retreating to their estates.
Because living forever completely erodes their empathy.
Exactly. They are insulated from the consequences of their governance, making them totally alien to the mortal citizens they rule.
So the citizens are restless, the elites are desperately using violence to cling to power, and it's just this massive powder keg of lost legitimacy.
Just waiting for a spark.
And into this powder keg walks the protagonist, Kurian. He's a warrior, deeply conditioned to obey, carrying immense trauma. But his awakening, his rebellion, isn't just a physical fight. It acts as the specific psychological spark that destabilizes the whole system.
Yes, Kurian is the catalyst because he breaks the psychological panopticon.
Wait, a panopticon? Like the 18th century prison design, where the guards can theoretically see everyone, but the prisoners can't see into the guard tower?
That's the one. So the prisoners just police themselves because they have to assume they're always being watched.
Right.
And that is the exact mechanism of systemic control. In an oppressive, decaying hierarchy, you don't actually need a guard watching every single citizen. You just need the citizens to keep each other in line through paranoia.
Everyone is just performing obedience.
Exactly. They don't believe in the system anymore, but they act like they do because they think their neighbor still believes in it.
Oh, that's wild. So let me ask you this. Kurian isn't just a guy with a sword leading a rebellion. He basically represents the tipping point of the Soviet Union. Is his character essentially the embodiment of ideological exhaustion finally catching fire?
That is exactly what he represents. His awakening is the moment a highly visible figure simply stops performing. He stops pretending to believe. And the moment he stops, it breaks the spell for everyone else.
They realize the guard tower is actually empty.
Yes, they realize the power was an illusion.
Which brings up a core quote from the source document that I think sums up this entire process. When belief dies, the system dies. The system is only held together by our collective hallucination that it holds power.
Which forces us to look at the immediate aftermath, because we tend to romanticize the fall of oppressive empires as this, glorious, victorious liberation. The rebels win, the credits roll, everyone's happy.
Right, the Death Star blows up and we all have a party.
Exactly. But the neuroscience and psychology of systemic collapse paint a much more terrifying reality.
Yeah, so now we are moving from macro-societal collapse down into micro-psychological chaos. Let's make this tangible for the listener.
Okay.
Think about your own job. If your company suddenly went bankrupt overnight and the entire corporate structure vanished, your first thought probably isn't, wow, I am totally free.
Definitely not.
Your first thought is a terrifying spike of panic. How do I pay my mortgage? Who am I without this job title? What do I actually do tomorrow morning? Now multiply that existential vertigo by an entire civilization.
The identity crisis occurs on a mass scale. Without a hierarchy, people face this profound existential vertigo. Because whether you were the oppressor or the oppressed, the hierarchy was giving you your script.
It told you what rules applied.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chaos is not just a political state. It is a profound neurological event. Our brains are, at their core, prediction engines.
Right.
We burn a massive amount of calories trying to anticipate what happens next so we can survive it. We love structure because it dramatically reduces prediction error.
So when the rules vanish, the brain's prediction engine just redlines.
It does. Every single choice becomes overwhelmingly complex. The amount of variables you have to calculate just to get through the day spikes astronomically.
And your body physically reacts to that, right?
Oh, absolutely. When prediction errors multiply, cortisol floods the system. The prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain, is essentially overridden by the amygdala.
Wow.
The nervous system is violently thrown into raw survival mode because it simply cannot map the environment anymore.
You know, it sounds like stepping off a treadmill that was doing all the pacing for you.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, like you've been running on this thing for years, letting the machine dictate the speed, the incline, the rhythm. And suddenly, the machine vanishes from under your feet, and you have to consciously think about how to take every single step.
Right, how to balance, how to pace yourself.
Exactly. And your brain just short circuits. The sheer cognitive load of conscious existence is just too much.
The cognitive load is staggering. And, well, nature abhors a vacuum. When cognitive load is that high and the population is flooded with cortisol, opportunists instantly rise to fill the void.
Because people are desperate for a new script.
Exactly. Extremists mobilize rapidly. In a state of high anxiety, whoever stands up and offers the absolute simplest, most confident rulebook wins the crowd.
Which leads to something the sources mention that is just incredibly dark. They describe a nostalgia for stability.
Yeah, that's a tough one to swallow.
It really is. I have a really hard time accepting that. Wait, are humans really so terrified of freedom that they miss being oppressed just because it was predictable? I mean, would they actively choose a dictator over freedom just so they don't have to figure out their own daily routine?
It sounds cynical to our idealistic modern ears, but we have to separate human philosophy from human biology.
Okay, how so?
Predictability to the human nervous system translates directly to safety. Even if a system is highly oppressive, if you know the exact rules, you know how to navigate them to avoid getting hurt.
Because at least you know where the landmines are.
Exactly. Total uncertainty means the threat could come from anywhere, at any time, from anyone. The human brain, operating in survival mode, will almost always choose a familiar cage over a pitch-black wilderness.
That is deeply unsettling. So the psychological freefall we are talking about triggers a paradoxical human reflex.
Yeah.
According to the dossier, the immediate instinct upon destroying a hierarchy isn't to build an egalitarian utopia.
No, not at all.
It's to immediately build a brand new hierarchy.
We tear down the old pyramid, experience the sheer existential terror of the void, and frantically look around for bricks to build a new pyramid.
Wow.
And we do this because hierarchy functions as a deeply embedded social technology.
A social technology, so not a physical tool, but an invisible machine for organizing human behavior.
Precisely. We reconstruct hierarchy to dramatically reduce that overwhelming cognitive load. It simplifies decisions and roles. You don't have to violently negotiate every single interaction over resources or territory from scratch if there is a clear chain of command.
It just creates predictability. You know who leads, who follows.
And what rules apply? It provides the emotional security of order. For the human animal, order inherently feels safer than absolute freedom.
It's so ironic, though. We spend all this time fighting against restrictive structures, writing stories like San Vitae, where the hero overthrows the evil empire, but the science says the second we tear them down, our brains panic and we immediately start drawing up plans for a new pyramid. Are we just biologically trapped in a loop?
Well, that brings us to the philosophical debate outlined in the dossier. Thinkers have argued over the nature of this cycle for centuries, and there are essentially three ways to interpret the collapse and rebuilding of these systems.
Okay, let's walk through those three lenses.
The first lens views collapse as a failure. This is the idea that systems break under the weight of their own arrogance, greed, and contradictions, like the Roman elites stealing the blocks from the Jenga tower.
Right. It's a moral failing.
Exactly. The argument here is that if we were just better, smarter, or more empathetic architects, the hierarchy would stand forever.
So it's our fault for being flawed. What's the second view?
The second lens views collapse as a renewal. The idea here is that old structures absolutely must die so that new, better ones can emerge.
Oh, so collapse isn't a catastrophe. It is a necessary evolution.
Right. It's the forest fire that burns away the dead wood and the overgrown canopy so that sunlight can reach the soil and new seeds can grow.
That's definitely the more optimistic, cyclical take. And the third?
The third is the coldest view. It states that collapse is simply inevitable.
Just unavoidable.
Yeah, it's not a moral failing, and it's not necessarily a beautiful natural evolution. It is just the physics of human organization. Entropy dictates that impermanence is the primary rule of history. All hierarchies decay. No system, no matter how brilliantly designed, is permanent.
Just the universe doing what the universe does. The energy just dissipates.
Exactly.
But regardless of whether you view it as a failure of greed, a necessary forest fire, or just cold entropy, the dossier summarizes it all with a profound core realization. Collapse is not the end of hierarchy. It is the end of that hierarchy.
It is the human condition distilled. We are trapped in a constant oscillating search for the balance between our high-minded desire for autonomy and our deep, primitive neurological need for structure.
And that really brings our journey full circle today.
It does.
Because whether we are dissecting the slow, tax-burdened decay of the Roman Empire, or the silent ideological evaporation of the Soviet Union, or even the fictional fracturing of the immortal Santori elites in San Vitae, the underlying blueprint holds true.
Collapse is always a slow decay of belief.
Masked by the performance of obedience. And when that invisible structure finally shatters, the human brain is plunged into terrifying existential vertigo. We short-circuit under the cognitive load of absolute freedom, and so we rapidly construct new hierarchies just to feel safe again.
The systems that govern our lives only exist because we collectively agree to hallucinate their power. And yet, we desperately need that hallucination to exist so we can function at all.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to look around at your own life. Look closely at the invisible structures you operate within every single day. The corporate ladders at your job, the unspoken social circles in your community, the deeply ingrained cultural expectations of your family.
They're everywhere.
They really are. And understanding the mechanics of collapse reveals two seemingly contradictory truths: the extreme fragility of institutional power and the deep, enduring resilience of the human need for order.
The walls around us are made of nothing but belief. But belief is a very, very heavy thing.
It is. So I am going to leave you with a final thought to mull over, based on the text's closing thesis. When the old world falls, the first instinct is to build a new one. Challenge yourself to consider your own life. If the primary hierarchy giving you your identity today were to completely vanish tomorrow, what kind of new structure would your instincts rush to build to fill the void?
That's the real question.
Would you immediately start stacking brass for a new pyramid? Or would you try to build something else entirely? Think back to that Roman senator standing in the absolute silence of the empty forum. The statues are gone. What do you put in their place?